Ready, boss?
Oh, great.
How did I
get your glasses?
How did I do?
Great.
Steven reminded me to bring my glasses. Well, I'm completely intimidated by experiences and your family's track record, Steven. And it's always a pleasure to see you and share your memories with the public. So you were 10 years old when the part of Yugoslavia you lived in was occupied by Hungary and your family's life was forever changed. Now, before we get to that, can you give us a little background about what life was like up to 10 years? Tell us about your family, relations with Jews and non-Jews in your community, anything you'd like to share.
Okay. I was raised in a upper middle class family. As you said, my mother was a graphic artist. She didn't do much artwork after my sister and I displaced her from her studio that became our playroom. My father was, at that time, the manager of a publishing house. Later on, he became editor-in-chief of the newspaper that the house published. We were not observant. At home, we did not keep kosher. About the only Jewish traditions maintained at the home was, first of all, on Saturday main meal was a bean dish that called cholent that could be prepared the night before so that you didn't do any work.
Right.
And the annual cleaning out of the cupboards of every crumb of leavened bread and burning that, even though the family continued to eat leavened bread.
Just before Passover.
Just
right.
for Passover.
Like right now, right.
That was a custom that we all participated in. At home, we spoke Hungarian. In school, once I started first grade, the school was in Serbian. It was called the Jewish school, but it was actually a public school. Yugoslavia was so dirt poor at that. To show you how dirt poor Yugoslavia was, when King Peter rode into Belgrade in 1918 at the liberation of Belgrade, he had no boots. He rode his horse barefooted, the king. His son, before he was assassinated, sort of made up for that loss. But anyhow, in Yugoslavia, public education, 4-year public education was mandatory, except the state could not afford it. So any organization, religious or otherwise, that provided a building and 3 teachers, the government provided a 4th teacher, and that who became the principal, and that was a government school. So the school I went to was called the Jewish school, even though it was named after the Queen, because the Jewish community supported it. Jewish community.
Did you go to Hebrew school, or you weren't?
We went to school 5.5 days a week, including Saturday mornings, and 3 days a week in the afternoon we went to religious school. In addition, since Saturday morning was taken up, Saturday afternoon there was a youth service conducted entirely by the students, which had to end very promptly at 2, for the same reason that the 2 theaters in the city started their matinees at 2, and it was important to clear out the sanctuary to get to our seats in time. That's what the very carefree, very enjoyable childhood.
Can you tell us about the makeup of the town, percentages of Jews and non-Jews?
If you remember the map that was shown, that was part of Hungary until World War I. At that time, the majority were Hungarians, but there was also a large Serbian contingent. There was a large Croatian contingent of these mountaineers. At one public place, I said all 2 meters tall. somebody challenged me on that, and all I could say, yeah, well, for a 10-year-old, they all look 2 meters tall. These mountaineers who became very prosperous farmers. There was a Jewish population of about 6,000, and I don't have the exact number, but probably the same number of Germans brought in by the Austrians, and probably the similar number of Roma gypsies who did all of the worst menial tasks.
Right. So pretty diverse community.
Yeah,
Most people got along fairly well.
Well,
Off and on.
so yes, there were three soccer teams in town: Serbian, Croatian, Hungarian. They played a round robin. We went to watch it, not so much to see the game, but to watch the mounting police getting on the field to break up the crowds.
So I'll take back the aura of good feeling I thought we were getting.
No, there wasn't.
Okay, thank you. So in 1941, as I mentioned with the maps, Germany invades Yugoslavia and its ally Hungary, and Hungary occupies the part of Yugoslavia where you were. And right away, things really changed. Tell us about how life changed from the first.
Right away, on the day of the occupation, a Hungarian officer with a drawn handgun expelled my father from his office and my aunt, who was by then the manager, and from her office. In all of the Jewish establishments, Aryan administrators were placed. This administrator vowed to pauperize the family, which he did very simply. He closed access to the family's personal bank accounts for my father and uncle, and turned around and changed a 100-person payroll, charged a 100-person payroll to that personal account, which sort of wiped us out on day one. All kinds of restrictive events all through these 3 years, more and more repression, more and more stringent regulations. Half of the apartment was given up to housing military. We lived from the property that we could sell and from my mother's handiwork. For us kids, the biggest constraints were, number one, Jews were restricted to 6% of the students in academic high schools, which starts at 5th grade in Europe. So I had to study very hard to be one of the 9 kids to be in there. Second, access to the beach was closed off. And third, access to the movies was closed off. And those at that age are very...
That's a big deal when you're 11 and 12.
Very serious deal.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a very hard, harsh occupation.
So you went to upper middle class to
paupers.
Instant, very lower class, and really scrambling for any kind of quality of life.
Yep.
Very
Definitely.
quickly. So this happened to all the Jews in the town. Did the Jews work together? Did any non-Jews sort of help you out along the way, or is it just too risky?
There was help. Obviously, first of the regulations was that Jews could not employ Christians. We had to let our cook go, but she came back to help as often as she could. There was a lot of collaboration. The former accountant of the printing plant became the real macher, the real doer in liquidating property.
So the head accountant, who had worked for your dad for probably a while,
he was
early on, he turns and
he was handling essentially all of the transactions for a large number of Jewish families. And because of his regard for my father, he didn't charge us a fee for his services.
Oh, isn't that nice? Okay. So you did have some help, but now the Germans aren't there. None of this is being done by the Germans.
Yeah.
Who are besides the town people, who else are enforcing these drastic changes for the Jews?
All of the, first of all, the occupation was by the Hungarian army, but the Hungarian state police was a fantastic entity. I don't know how many thousand strong. Very intimidating people walking around with these black bowler hats and the huge black cock feather in their hats. They prepared for the deportation. In 1942, they staged a trial effort in a little bit south from where we were and killed a couple thousand people, Jews and Serbs. So police presence was very, very strong.
Was that at Yash? Is that what you're talking about? IASI?
No, that's in Romania.
That's later.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is Novi Sad in Yugoslavia.
Okay. So you stayed in school? Did your sister stay in school?
My sister did not make it the test. She went to a parochial school for those years.
So education continues.
Yeah, many of the Catholic orders were very decent and did not obey the state law and accepted Jewish students. Both parochial schools run by nuns and academic high schools operated by a branch of the Jesuits.
All right, so life continues academically, if you will, and you still have...
Right. Yeah, the Jewish community provided
Still
equivalent schooling for everybody else.
Right.
There were enough Jewish teachers let go who could staff the Jewish school.
Okay. All right, so this is sort of what life was like for a few years. And then the spring of '44, Hungary's about to surrender to the Allies, and Germany moves quickly to occupy Hungary. And the areas it occupied included your town. Conditions get much worse very quickly under the Hungarians. Your father's taken away. Your mother, your sister, and you were forced into a ghetto. Tell us about that transition and then what the ghetto was like for all of you.
It's about 100, altogether there were about 600 German soldiers in the entire country.
German soldiers.
German soldiers in occupying Hungary. Yeah, and those who have any interest in the military do a fast calculation. 600 German soldiers in a matter of 3 weeks deported 500,000 Jews to Auschwitz. Divide 500,000 by 600 and you think these German soldiers must have worked very hard.
So most of it
there were
was
no
done
German
by Hungarians, right?
The entire deportation was done by the Hungarian state police, according to plans that have worked out. All it took is for the chief officer, Eichmann, to authorize the Hungarian police to do this. My father was taken away by Hungarian plainclothesmen. We were directed in a ghetto strung along the railroad siding into miserable conditions, all done by the Hungarians.
I'm sorry, did you know what happened to your dad? Did you have any idea? Or?
We knew that he was at first in a camp, actually in the bottom of a brick factory nearby, and then it disappeared. He had been quite ill. We never expected him to be able to survive. The night of the deportation was one of the bitterest. The day of the deportation is one of my bitterest memories. I have no idea how the information was broadcast that 6,000 Jews were going to be deported, moved into the ghetto that day. But we lived on the second floor. By the time we were told to get started, 2 levels of stairways were occupied with people lined up, ready to vandalize, to ransack the apartment. yelling at us, grabbing us, spitting at us as we took the few things that we were allowed to take down the stairs. It's in my memory.
Right.
It never will leave my memory.
Did you know, were these people who knew your family, or
I don't-
who knows? It was so hectic
Yeah,
you wouldn't
yeah.
know.
I said
But they were townspeople.
there were townspeople.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. And tell us about your cook and
Yeah.
what happens there.
Among those people was our former cook, who hadn't worked for us for 3 years, who went through the kitchen, picked up my mother's cookbook, went to the bedroom, picked up my mother's diary, went to the former studio, which was the playroom, took out a big folder and shoved in it a couple hundred lithographs, etchings, drawings, and took it with her. We didn't know that at that time.
And later on,
Later on, when we came back from the concentration camp, she gave it to us back. She gave it back to us.
and we actually had the cookbook on display at the previous exhibit. There's a lot more about this particular story in the online exhibit, which is called Some Were Neighbors, Collaboration, and Complicity. And Steven tells that story, and there's more information about the cookbook. So, you're on short notice, you're kicked out of your apartment, which half is already given to some other people, and you're sent to the ghetto. Tell us where you were, what the new conditions were like, and what life was like
The
there.
ghetto was a bunch of derelict houses along the facing the freight yards. Very little sanitation, very poor food service. Everybody crammed, 2 families per room. Essentially, no sanitary facilities for something like a week, less than a week. And then one day we were lined up. Trailer cars were there. Again, Hungarian gendarmes packed us into train into freight cars, standing room only, and we were transported to a nearby village that had been emptied and made available for collecting the people from.
Like a transit camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were assigned a chicken coop, an entire family. 3 or 4 days there, terrible conditions, sanitary food, nothing was available. All kinds of rumors flying around.
Right.
We are going to be returned home. We are going to have trains to Switzerland.
And the Hungarians hadn't told you anything. You
Yeah.
just had to do what they told you.
Right. So it was very, very stressful until, again, we were called out. We were lined up. The railroad cars were there again. And we were packed in, 60 to 80 people to a car, but not the American freight cars that you are accustomed to seeing. The short European cars, one of which is
Like
in
the
the
one
museum.
upstairs.
One bucket for sanitary purposes, the door slammed shut, and we were off. 5 days, 6 days, I don't know. But eventually,
And no food or water.
no food or water. We were,
So let's just review here. So there are about 6,000 Jews in your town. They're all put in this horrible ghetto for
Yeah.
a few days, then moved to this other holding place.
which
and then
probably
thrown on the
doubled the number of people from
surrounding
from the
areas.
surrounding area, villages, small towns, yeah.
Right.
And then to Auschwitz.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like inside that car?
Well, first time you wet your pants at age 13, you go crying to your mother. Second time around, it just doesn't matter anymore. People dying in the car, people going mad. That people dying was a plus because the bodies could be stacked, and that gave a little bit more space to crunch down. But not very far from from the bucket because the stuff from the bucket was slushing out all over onto the people. And you spend days and nights like that.
And you're 13. You're
Yep.
13 years old.
So, yes,
Is there any air, or was there a little window, or was it just stifling?
there was one little window covered with barbed wire.
And no clue to your
No,
destination?
no. And more standing than moving.
Right. 4 or 5, 6 days. Then you get to Auschwitz.
Yep.
And the doors open. Tell us about that.
Well, the stench and the noise hits you at the same time. This incredible stench that still every survivor's nostrils still remember. Yelling, prisoners coming to empty the trains. SS, for the first time we saw SS, a truncheon on one hand, a whip in the other hand, urging people to move. If you didn't jump from the train, you were tossed out of the train. Huge crowds milling around. The inmates yelling at you, "Why did you come? We sent people to tell everybody what's happening here. Why didn't you listen to them? Why did you come then?" It was very strong. Eventually, men and women being separated. My mother and sister went one line, I went in the other line. Then suddenly we were facing this German officer. Two-thirds of the survivors that you have interviewed and others will tell you that was Dr. Mengele,
Right.
who I happen not to have been introduced to the gentleman, so I don't know his name.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that he had white gloves on, and he sent me that way.
Right.
And I found out the next day that way was the gas chamber and crematorium.
And you told me something which I share in other programs, that the first time you saw a German
Yeah.
in this history was when?
On the siding in Auschwitz.
So you'd never seen a German before that. You get out of the train after this horrible, and that's the first time you encounter the Germans and the SS with the officers and the subordinates and the prisoners telling you what to do.
Yep.
So what happened to your family?
Well, it turns out that my mother and sister were separated somewhere down the line. They were in different places. My mother perished sometimes in the first couple of weeks. My sister, I met my sister twice in Auschwitz, which didn't happen to many people.
Right.
She eventually was shipped to Bergen-Belsen, liberated there, and we were reunited in Subotica. But I was in a group of kids, 13 to 15-year-olds, and we were put into this huge building, stripped naked, shorn of every hair on the body, disinfected with something terribly stringent, given a cold shower, tossed some inmate clothing, unmatched shoes, still no food, still nothing to drink.
So you probably haven't eaten or anything to drink in a week, at least.
Something like that, yeah.
And facing all that's in the car, and then you're here. Did you get a tattoo, Steve?
At that time in Auschwitz, incoming inmates were no longer tattooed, only people going out. I was tattooed on my way out.
Oh, okay. Just for information, Auschwitz is the only place where people were tattooed. You got a number everywhere else. That's a common misunderstanding. But Auschwitz, you might get a tattoo. Okay.
But the number is tattooed on your arm, and that's your number.
So you were in Auschwitz for a few months. Tell us what life was like. What was your work? What were the sleeping conditions? Share with us what you can.
The first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I was in what was referred to as the youth barrack. Kids all at my age, about my age, regularly at 6 a.m., line up for food. Before you could organize somehow a cup The soup was ladled out into your hands. Standing around, sitting around all day long, locked in the barrack at night, six to a bunk, 3-level bunks. I was with a group of friends, classmates, and one by one they died off.
From disease or
Just starvation and
deprivation?
The big things you learned, well, there are lots of little things you learn. Like, for example, once a day there's a run to the latrine. Make sure as you run to pick up a smooth pebble so that you have something to wipe yourself with.
A pebble.
A pebble. It did not happen to supply toilet paper.
Right.
The big things that you learn is that, first of all, Auschwitz was a killing camp, 1.5 million people dead, but Auschwitz was also a humongous stockyard stocking potential slave laborers. And officials, military and civilian, from German factories, quarries, railroads, etc., came to shop for slaves. If you have seen pictures of antebellum slave fairs in Alexandria and elsewhere, imagine doing that at thousands of people at a time.
So wealthy industrialists will come into, not just Oskar Schindler, but others will come in and they need X number of workers for whatever their factory is. So all around Auschwitz and other places, factories spring out because they get free labor.
Well, but the factories were everywhere from Paris west and from...
Right.
The thing you realized after a few days is that these people shopping for slave labor did not stop at the youth barracks. If you wanted to buy laborers, you certainly, for heavy physical labor to death, because that was the arrangement, the SS referred to them politely as a slight deviation on their final path. That was the understanding, that you work to death, then they can kill you. So they never chose kids from our group. And kids and others in Auschwitz, what you learn is that people emotionally and mentally die before they die physically. Mm-hmm. All over Auschwitz, all day long, you saw these walking corpses, eyes that no longer see, food that can be taken away from them because they no longer recognize what it is, shuffling around.
Completely dehumanized.
Got totally dehumanized until some morning, they're carted away with the night's corpses directly to the crematorium. No point in sending them to the gas chamber. They were dead. My understanding is that my mother was among those. So life looked pretty bleak. Another thing about Auschwitz is, if you've ever seen a Sing Sing or Alcatraz movie, you know that the prisoners are afraid of two groups of people, the guards and the leaders.
Right.
And you're afraid of the latter more because they're locked in at night with you. The guards are locked out. Well, the SS camps were ran on that principle. Common criminals.
These are the capos.
Were brought in as capos, overseers, and they ruled two per barrack ruled the scene. Crueler than any of the SS enlisted men, and free to do what they want. okay, the two couples in our compound finally must have realized that shoving and yelling and beating is not enough of a communication medium. They occasionally needed some verbal interaction, and they needed an interpreter. Now, one thing I forgot to say about my childhood is that my sister and I were under the control of an absolutely miserable governess whom we hated as much as we could.
How do you feel about that, Stephen? What did you really think of her?
I mean, we made up every prank, everything we could to get this woman off our back. However, she taught me German, and I volunteered to be an interpreter, and I became an interpreter in Auschwitz.
For the capos?
For the capos.
Okay. Did that get you any privileges?
The privilege was that after the inmates were fed from the barrels, the interpreters with their spoons could spoon out what was left over in the bottom of the barrels.
And that's a big deal.
That was a big deal. So I still...
I'm sorry, you're still in the youth barracks at this...
Still in the youth barrack, still am convinced that that's where I'm going to die. Until on August something, it's recorded everywhere, about 3,000 gypsies in the same compound were exterminated in one night.
In one night, right.
And the following day, a group of new capos showed up. Instead of the green triangle of the criminals, they wore red triangles of the political prisoners. And one of them came over to our barrack looking for a Hungarian, Polish, German interpreter. Well, I had never heard Polish spoken. I've never read Polish, but I knew that it was a Slavic language like Serbian, and that it couldn't be much different from Serbian. Mm-hmm. So I volunteered. I guess I didn't have much competition because I was the last one left living from our group coming from Hungarian-occupied Yugoslavia.
And just to remind the audience, how old were you at this time?
13.
13, okay.
So this Polish couple picked me up as his interpreter. And that was the most significant single change in my life. Marrying Norma was the second, but that came much later. They made it clear that we are all to get in. Many of them were anti-Semitic, but that didn't count because right now we have other things to worry about, and that we all have to resist the Germans in everything we could and work together.
So not only did they bring you in as interpreter, but you're now in the group to do what you could to survive and fight back. Okay.
Did everything but beating me to get this through my head. So I became an interpreter, meeting the German shoppers at the compound headquarters, escorting them, translating for them as they interviewed inmates, and then escorting them out. Of course, you quickly learn that you don't have to interpret verbatim. If they were looking for woodworkers, then any answer similar that anybody who had calluses on their hands could be introduced as a woodworker, etc. But you have to be careful not to speak too long because the Germans knew that some of the interpreters were padding their responses.
Got it.
So that was the official work. The unofficial work, it was many other things. Resistance was exercised as much as we could, going from compound to compound, pretending to be repairing roofs and passing intelligence and passing black market goods was a big time. And that's how I met my sister in one of the women's camps, women's compounds. So that went on for quite a while. Things were becoming worse and worse. It was known that the Russians were advancing, and the Polish kapos decided to smuggle me out of Auschwitz by pressing me in an outgoing transport to get out of there, and coaching me very carefully as presidential candidates are coached before debates on thinking of every possibility that may occur. So that's how I got out of Auschwitz, got tattooed, put on a train, before putting on a train, the capos handed me some reasonably decent clothes, etc., and we were off.
Just to underline an important point is that, particularly for students, is the resistance comes in many forms. And you just heard some real examples of that. It's not just armed violence and armed resistance. There were many examples of that, surprising ones. There are all kinds of other ways, even within an unbelievable place like Auschwitz, where people were trying their best, not only to keep going, but make things difficult. So you got on this train, and what's next?
And the train 3 days later arrived in a village called Niederorschel. We were let out. The SS commanders gave a speech. The foreman gave a speech. A Hungarian translator translated it. And then the foreman came up. This long line of 230 people came up to me and said, "What are you doing here? I didn't select you." I was his interpreter in Auschwitz.
Oh, so
and he recognized me.
He figured it out the game.
Well, that was not one of the coaching things I received.
That was not one of the top events in your life either.
It wasn't. So
what happened?
Took a long breath and I said, "Well, sir, with this many new inmates, they thought you would need another interpreter." He said, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea," and walked away.
At the age of 13, just let's make sure we're clear on this. Okay.
But that was not it, because as soon as we were let in and to our great surprise, were seated at benches at the table and getting some warm hot soup, the interpreter and other inmate sat right tight against me and started asking questions. Where does the foreman where did you come from? How come the foreman knows you, etc., etc., etc. I was essentially the first night, I never slept because I was interrogated by the camp resistance organization.
They thought you were a plant.
Yeah, I don't know what But eventually I convinced them, particularly when talking to a gypsy orderly and telling him what happened to his family. Slowly they accepted me.
You were a very persuasive 13-year-old.
Yeah, I had to. So this was a factory producing wings for Messerschmitt airplanes. Sabotage in the classical order, a classical definition was done as much as we could, even though supervision was very strict. We worked 14-hour days, 6.5 days a week. But conditions were a lot better than Auschwitz. We had some food. I'm told that rations were calculated at 1,200 calories a day for that kind of work. One advantage was that the camp cook was a Czech political prisoner, formerly owner of a restaurant in Prague, and he managed to get some flavor and texture and variety into the slop that we were fed.
So you were a foodie too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yes. So that lasted through the winter.
Now we're into 1945. Right.
Fewer and fewer parts arrived. We were shipping out less and less complete wings. We watched the bombers going east in the morning and returning west in the afternoon, always in missing man formation, counting the holes, and the planes that were shut down. And
right.
That was one change that was noticeable, that there were fewer and fewer holes as the war went on. Until March the 1st,
45. Right.
45, March 31st. April 1st, they emptied the camp and took us on a death march. 11 days to reach Buchenwald. Probably a third of the people dying on the road, either by being shot for staying behind, or shot while attempting to escape, or shot when the locals brought them back the following morning, shackled with barbed wire, and then shot in front of us. So
You got through that and got to Buchenwald.
we got to Buchenwald. We kids, there were about 6 of us at the same age. We knew something about the resistance plan to liberate Auschwitz from our capos. We wanted to participate in that. I plopped down on a cot, and 2 of my buddies woke me up. You idiot, you slept through it all. The Americans are marching in. So I cannot, I have no reliable.
So you don't have any glorious stories.
I have no reliable
of an
testimony.
American soldier appearing over the hill.
No.
You were out cold.
Yes. Until somebody took me to the 120th U.S. Army 120th Field Evacuation Hospital, which took over that crescent of barracks, of stone buildings
right.
that were designed for SS rest and recuperation facilities, and that became one.
So you were in the field hospital for a while, and then you went back to your hometown.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I went back. A well-to-do peasant family took me in to fatten me up, which was a bad mistake because my liver couldn't take it, and I got jaundice. I can't give blood because it looks like I've had
Problems.
but the illness, hepatitis. Thank you.
Thank you, med students.
But it's just liver ailment called jaundice, and so eventually it took a long time to get going, because people from the Western countries were out of Buchenwald in a day or two. Those of us going on the other side of what was by then the Iron Curtain took a long time. So I went back, my sister came back, my father came back on a Soviet military train, totally broken physically and emotionally, unable to accept that our mother was not returning. He lasted 4 months, and then he passed away in February 1946.
Right. So you did get to see him.
Get to see him.
And your sister.
Did get to bury him in a tomb.
I think I'd like to leave a few minutes for questions.
Okay.
We do have lots more to talk about getting into Yugoslavia, getting out of Yugoslavia, but I want to give the audience a chance. Now, you can come up to the microphones. Here are the rules. 2 microphones. Ask your question. I'll repeat it, make sure we all get it, and Steven does it, gets it, and then we'll close the program. So please don't take off yet, because we always end with a closing comment from our first person VIP. So if anyone has a question, and let's keep the questions to what you've heard from Steven about his experience. Anyone have a question you want to come up with? Come on up to the mic, please. I can't resist. How old are you?
14.
Okay, I'm fixated on that age because of what Stephen went through. What's your question, young man?
You earlier mentioned Adolf Eichmann.
Yes.
Can you go more in depth on what he did? Because I don't know much about that.
If you go to the permanent exhibition, you'll learn a lot. He was a mid-level officer in the SS. He happened to work for some big shots. He was the gentleman who organized the Wannsee Conference in a suburb of Berlin that decided on the execution of the final solution, and he became the person going from country to country executing the agreed-on order of the final solution, namely the elimination of 6 million European Jews.
We have a lot on the website about him, but he organized when the Germans annexed Austria, his claim to fame was he did a really good job organizing it, and I'm being very diplomatic. And then he rose up in SS ranks and was the main transportation guru, if you will. And there's a lot on the website, but he's one of the key perpetrators.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? Anything about Stephen's story? No. Thank you.
Have you ever met Elie Wiesel?
Elie Wiesel, I met him this building was in the old convention center in Washington, D.C., at the Second World Gathering of Survivors. I met him. We were in Paris at the same time before coming to the States. So I checked with him whether we were in the same place, in the same agency, but we weren't. And I met him 2 or 3 times after that.
He was our founding chairman of the museum. Got the Nobel Peace Prize, died a few years ago. Again, not just because I work on the encyclopedia, but there's a lot of information on the encyclopedia about Elie Wiesel. Author of Night, many of you may have read that or will read it in school. All right.
The 2 ladies there.
Let's alternate.
Hi, I want to thank you for being here. Pretty awesome. Also, I wanted to know if you received any medical attention or was there access to any medicines of any kind while you were in
the camps.
In the camps?
No medical attention. I have the complete documentation from the International Tracing Service. My medication card is empty. My punishments card is empty, which I'm very proud of.
Looking like a 13-year-old.
And drugs, as I said, my clothing was a lot better than other inmates. A group in Niederorschel, a group from the camp went to the town to get with a cart to bring bread and other stuff. I could disguise myself and a couple times sneak into a pharmacy and get some aspirin and bandages with black market money, and that was about what the camp provided.
Aspirin and Band-Aids, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
But a very prominent French doctor wrote a book about his experiences in the Holocaust.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to have to do one more, but afterwards there'll be time if you want to come up and shake Steven's hand or give him a hug or ask him another question. So you're going to have the last one. I apologize to you too. Go ahead.
I am wondering how you attempt to recover mentally and emotionally. I'm wondering how you attempt to recover mentally and emotionally from this. Did you seek help from a mental health professional?
I'm going to repeat that. What's it been like to recover mentally and emotionally from all this? Did you get help along the way? How you doing? Go ahead.
Mentally, I don't know if I had to do anything. Emotionally, I certainly started out by closing it off. For many years, first years of our marriage, children coming, etc., if I thought about it at all, I thought about it in the third person. Until some unpleasantness arose at work, and I realized that in making personnel decisions, no matter what it was, I visualized the selection line in Auschwitz. And that I was not a person to make any kind of career decisions about anybody. Resigned as department head and took off again. But that was a hard lesson to learn.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn back to Steven in a moment to finish the program, but first I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. We'll have first-person programs every Wednesday and Thursday until the middle of August, and I know you're in Washington all summer, so you'll be back. We hope you can come back for another program. For those of you who didn't have a chance to ask Steven a question, he'll be on stage, and after he finishes, you can come and say hello, take a picture, and we'll just wait in line. It's our tradition that our first person has the last word. Steven, could you share some thoughts to close our program?
Right. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, is that I was not supposed to be here. Not that the regular speaker canceled out and I was not supposed to be here because 80 years ago I was accused, tried, convicted, and condemned to death. The only thing that was left pending is time and place. And I have been living under that death warrant ever since. So that's what I hope you can keep in mind, of how far in man's injustice to man can be. It didn't start from scratch. It started with a small, very small number of agents, and it started with a huge, huge number of bystanders who did nothing. And out of that mix came the progressive worsening of the situation. The motto of this establishment is never again. Yet, we have had genocides, many genocides, since the Holocaust. 2 of them in my own native country, one in Bosnia, one in Kosovo. So please keep that in mind. The smallest manifestation of injustice, discrimination, persecution, there are always people ready to pick up the slogan and carry it forth. The only thing that was different with Germany is that eventually it got to the point where it became part of the government's agenda. Legislative, judicial, every part of the government participated in executing the final solution. That's what needs to be avoided. You can air your prejudices if you feel like it, wherever, but please do not carry them to the point where you find a couple hundred of like-minded people who are ready to start another genocide. Thank you.
Steven, we can't thank you enough.